And welcome back from that quick break. Our coverage continues here from SAWC 2018 right here on The Pulse, a live news program brought to you by Medline. Right now we want to talk about treating chronic wounds, and we know the costs are high. The costs to the U.S. $25 billion a year. And as the population ages and wounds are becoming more common, healthcare providers are looking for some new solutions to protect the skin. Our next guest published a study related to this very subject, so we want to welcome in right now Dr. Daniel Gibson to the Pulse stage to talk more about this. Dr. Gibson, can you talk to us about your background in wound care and this recent study?
Sure thing. I'm currently an assistant professor at the University of Florida at the Institute for Wound Research. I joined that institute with a broad background, including mechanical engineering, biochemistry, and biophysics, with the intent of addressing chronic wound problems as looking for a whole solution. What we found is the biology of wound care requires ideas and interventions that address the physical, the biological, the chemical, and all of these basically simultaneously. So recently, one of the things we've begun studying are skin protectants and looking at them from all of those angles, with the basic idea being that you have maybe pressure on the skin, a physical problem. The skin becomes inflamed, biological. And then as the person moves, you have physical insults to the skin, physical again, which then leads to a rupture or skin tear. So we've become aware of several classes of products, depending on the clinical scenario, which can help protect the skin. And one class of those are cyanoacrylate glues. Some of these have been used in other medical applications, and we've begun looking at what they can do for skin protection.
And why is it being used in wound care?
Classically, they had been used for sealing incisions. So if someone had a cut or a surgical incision, they would either be used as an adjunct to sutures, or sometimes in place of them if the tissue was too delicate to suture and that the suturing would do more damage. They're very, very neat materials where they dry really fast and they hold very tight, and they're very well tolerated biologically. We do in the Institute for Wound Research, we spend about half of our time doing ophthalmology research, and they even use this on people's eyes.
Wow.
So if you can put it in your eye, you can put it just about anywhere. So what we then started wondering from another angle is, well, it's pretty neat how quickly they set up and become like a film. Can you put it on an open wound? Can you kind of have a sheet instead of just holding skin together? So we've done a little bit of work on that and have also begun, well, what if you didn't quite have an injury yet? Could you start protecting it prior to that? So that's sort of what has brought us to where we are now with the current class of cyanoacrylate glues, is looking at prior to having an injury, can you do something to ameliorate those stresses and strains, the physical layer? Can you do it with a way that doesn't alter the biology to make the skin weak? And once you start having physical insults, can it live and withstand that and protect the tissue?
And so what were some of your findings comparing these two cyanoacrylate-based products?
Okay, so we've got about 2 studies that we've just about wrapped up on that. The first thing we found was just grossly looking at them after we've applied them. They look somewhat similar. There were 2 products we tested. One was pure cyanoacrylates, and the other was a combination of several different polymers, including cyanoacrylates. And we found that when you put them on, you could see a film on both of them. But we did end up finding that under liquid stress, so if someone has a dressing on over this, or even not, if they have any sweat or anything else, that's going to challenge that layer. And we found that when some of these were challenged, the one with the mixed products, actually some of it washed away. And even more frightening, we found it was still a little bit tacky and adhesive, almost like tape. Not as strong as the glue was to begin with, but it was still somewhat adhesive. And we had found that if there was an overdressing on that and you pulled it off, it would take some of the outer layers of the skin off.
Oh my goodness.
Which was pretty scary.
Yeah.
So that was our first one, and that kind of led us to think, well, part of the way we see this protection happening is through the firming of the skin. So if the skin is weak, you put a tough layer there, and it kind of holds things together. That makes sense. But also from the biomechanics side, if the outer surface is less adhesive and maybe even more slippery or somewhat harder than the skin, then if you have your pressure up against, say, like a bed sheet or your clothing, if that surface doesn't stick very well to the cotton and it just slides, then that strain from the movement will not be communicated to the tissue. And so you kind of have a protection through avoidance. Now, the two different products, one was adhesive, it would definitely hold on, and it would communicate every bit of that strain to the tissue. Whereas the other, we hypothesized that it would not even be able to communicate the strain to that. So that is our most recent work. We've just about finished it. We do have a poster here on that. If anyone local would like to go see it, LB20. Where we found that's exactly what had happened, is that the model tissue that we tested, when coated with a pure cyanoacrylate one, the device we used to put strain on that tissue couldn't even get a grip on it, and it just slid right across the surface. Whereas if it was bare, it could have a grip on it and would tear it. Or if it had the mixed polymer product, it would actually adhere to it as well and be able to pull and tear the skin.
So how are these findings translated clinically, and why does that matter?
Well, of course, we do benchtop stuff with models and things that we can manipulate, but the post-curing adhesiveness is one thing that really startled us. So we've been trying to tell everyone to be careful about that. We've had feedback that, yeah, clinicians have seen that tackiness. In terms of the clinical relevance and helpfulness of the concept of skin protection as a whole, as Dr. Dad, I've used things like this on my children before, like gluing blisters shut and things like that. But I've seen where existing skin tears have been reinforced with these. I think there's a poster here on that as well today. And the idea, the way I see this going long term, is, or I would like to see it, is prevention. And we've heard anecdotes within our lab from some of our former lab members who are like triathletes, who are prophylactically using these things in areas of high friction when they're running marathons and things. I think I've heard some of your sales reps using them on their heels and things as well. So the idea of preventing the tears or the skin deterioration to begin with is where I see the ultimate clinical utility going with this.
You're talking about prevention, but how important are skin protectants to the overall wound healing process?
Again, this is from a PhD's perspective with this. You don't want the wound to get bigger. I mean, that's kind of a understated comment. And the capacity to apply these to the wound periphery and afford some protection there, where on the tissue that's actually doing the act of healing, suggests to me it kind of puts a stake in the ground and saying, okay, this wound's not going to get any bigger. We're holding it at this depth, and we won't let it go, fall back and get larger. But a lot of that we'll have to wait and see. We have done some very, very preliminary work putting it over laser burns on some rat skin, and we did see that they could heal underneath the cyanoacrylate glue. So we do anticipate that they may be important in wound care for just as a wound protectant itself, not just a skin protectant as well.
Dr. Gibson, thank you so much for sharing insights from your study and in wound care today. We appreciate you being here, or as you like to be called, Dr. Dad, as well. And thank you for joining us here for The Pulse. Don't forget, you can check out all these products and insights anytime at medline.com. We'll be back here tomorrow from SAWC. You can check out the schedule by going to medlineconferences.com/SAWC 2018. For now, I'm Marianne Ostrogorski for The Pulse.